Hi everyone, this is Raymond Wood from the Raymond Wood podcast. We are back again, and this one I'm super excited to do because last time we done anything around sort of nutrition and health was over 14 months ago. And I am very, very excited to introduce you to Melissa Salmon from Refine Health and Wellbeing. Hi, Melissa, how are you?
Hi everyone. Hey Ray, I'm good. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. If you could just give everyone a little bit about your background in a 2 minute snippet, where you're based, where you're from, and how and why you got involved in the job that you do, and what your job title is.
Yeah, beautiful. So I am a naturopath and yoga instructor with a background in psychology. So my first degree was studying psych, which led me to study naturopathy. And then whilst I was studying, I was doing yoga teaching to get me through the degrees. And so basically now I run my own business, which integrates all those three disciplines together to help people with gut health, hormonal health, energy related health, and lots of other things. So helping people to, yeah, get to their goals, their health goals, in a way that's unique to them, that's tailored to them. And basically, a naturopath, if you haven't heard of one before, utilizes a lot of different tools to help someone with their health journey. So we're trying to really see that individual for who they are and get to see the root cause of what's going on for them. So if they have some sort of issue going on, whether it's a health condition or a health goal, we're using tools to really make a difference in that for the short, mid, and long term. So it's not so much a quick fix discipline, it's more of something that's trying to help them in that really big holistic way that's unique to them and not like cookie cutter kind of quick fix approach.
That's an amazing snippet, and I think all of our followers, we've got followers like mums and dads and athletes who are on our programs, but I think they're going to love this one. And I did mention when I spoke to you last week that the first time this was brought to my attention was in 2010, and I worked on one of football's biggest projects, and it was all around nutrition, but not just having the stereotypical 40% carbohydrates, 40% protein, 20% fats, but actually delving into what is actually good for you as an individual and what is good for me. And we had the amazing Chelsea Jean on over a year ago, and we do what's called, and you're probably familiar with the intolerance tests. But from a player's perspective, whether you're a tennis player, a soccer player, whatever sport you play, firstly, why is gut health so important? And why is it the foundation for peak performance?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I like to put it logically for people. So if you think of your body and your torso, your abdominal region, most of that is actually digestive organs or your gastrointestinal system. So from a logical perspective, it must have a massive role to play in how we function as humans. So basically, when I'm chatting to clients, I'm saying, how is your gut functioning and how can we improve it if there is something wrong, or how can we optimize it to optimize where you want to go? So if you're looking at a peak performance perspective or like an athletic perspective, the first place to start, if you really want to try and improve your performance from a health perspective, is seeing how your gut is actually functioning and seeing how, well you digest food, how often you're actually going to the bathroom, if it's too much or too little. Is that impacting how you play? So before you go into a match, are you feeling really nauseous from nerves, or are you, having to run to the bathroom because you're that nervous, or have you not gone for days? So, whilst it might seem like a bit of a taboo topic, it's actually so important because we all have a digestive system and we all eat food and we all need to get rid of waste. So, if your gut is functioning in a really good way, that will help you to absorb nutrients really well. It'll help you to recover from, say, a cold or flu much more easier. And it'll just help you to regulate your stress so much better. So they're probably the three top things that can support athletes in improving their gut health and what that will look like for them if they do improve it.
That's amazing. Now, one of the big things leading on from that, we got from like your website and your fact sheets was around the importance of nutrition and balance and macros. But for anyone out there similar to me who doesn't know what is actually a macro, and can you explain that in like layman's terms again for the
Yeah.
normal Joe public who won't know what it means?
Yeah, amazing. So macronutrient is basically one of the big types of macronutrients that you have within your diet. So that can be something like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, fiber is another one, and also water. So basically, you want to be looking at what kind of macronutrients are you getting into your diet and how can you manipulate them towards, in a good way, towards helping performance from a training perspective, as well as a moving into the actual proper game that you're going to or match or whatever it is to be able to use them to your benefit. So, in regards to gut health, one of the macronutrients that's often overlooked is actually fiber. And fiber is this amazing nutrient that can come in and do so many good things for you. And if it's supporting your gut health, and that's going to support performance as well. So the reason why fiber is important is because it helps to support deeper parts of your digestion and like deeper parts of your gut, especially something called the large intestine. And essentially that will help with nutrient absorption. So if we're helping your gut to be able to absorb those macronutrients well, it then means you can absorb all these micronutrients, which are all these other nutrients that are often overlooked in sports nutrition as well. So basically, yeah, there's a lot of conversation around carbohydrates, protein, then what about these other nutrients like fiber and say water intake, and then how they influence the gut as well. So that would be the overall answer I would probably give for that.
That's great. Now, just to finish off on gut health before we move to the next part, but things that, and this is can be sometimes very controversial, and this is where I think in 2010, in 2010, it stemmed from the issues about what carbs and what proteins to eat, but also like for the use of supplements for peak performance. So I think it's a double barrel question. Are you in favor of supplements? And if so, how would you attack it, especially because for our mums and dads out there, there's a lot of our athletes who are below the age of 18, but also what about if for some of our players who are adults, how would we attack it for both of those areas?
It's a good question too. So I love the use of supplements. I think it should be approached in a more tailored way though. So when you're looking at going into, say, a supplement store, there could be so many things you could purchase to, say, enhance performance. But the main question I would have for someone would be, how do you know what's in that store and what is actually good for you? So there's lots of nuance within supplements. And let's just say someone's gut health isn't actually functioning as well as it could. They could be having a supplement that they may not be absorbing well, or they may also be having a supplement that they may not actually need. So their money's going towards things that may not be absolutely necessary for them. So when I'm looking at an individual and say one of their goals is to improve their performance, their recovery with sport, one of my first things to do would be, okay, let's have a look at you as an individual. How is your gut functioning? So we'd look at that from a questionnaire perspective. Like I would ask questions, they would answer the questions, and we'd go from there. And often we would do, say, testing, functional testing for them to see what's actually going on within your gut. So when I'm doing functional testing, I'm looking at the gut digestion, so the ability to break down food and then absorb nutrients, gut lining, which is to do with your immune system, which is also to do with inflammation and how someone can recover well from, say, a cold or flu, but even exercise. Because as you know, when you exercise, you're breaking down muscle, there's lots of inflammation that goes on. So if your gut lining is supported, that will help all those inflammatory processes. And then the third thing is your gut microbiome, which is within your large intestine, and that is where a lot of the nutrients are kind of, absorbed to a certain degree. So if we're looking at those three parts of the gut, and there's, say, problems with one or all three, I would then use supplements in a specific directive way for that person to improve those systems. And then that means their money and attention is directed in a really tailored manner. And that would also coincide with their short, mid, and long-term goals. So let's say we have someone with gut problems and they're like, I just need to get through the game without feeling sick. We would look
Yeah.
at why they're feeling nauseous, and then we would target that, which would be a short-term goal. And then that would in turn lead to mid or long-term goals on how do we then increase their performance through increasing lean muscle mass or their cardio health or their athletic performance in different ways. And that's when you look at different supplements related to performance and recovery. So it is very nuanced and specific for each person. So that's why if you have someone on your healthcare team that can help direct you towards specific supplements, that's what's really going to help. And then within supplements, there's a whole world. So you've got all these different forms of the nutrients. For instance, if we look at magnesium, you've got things like magnesium glycinate, magnesium citrate, and they both would have different functions within the body. So let's say someone's like, oh, I've heard magnesium would be great for recovery, and then they go and get a mag citrate version. It might actually loosen their bowels and it might not do them good. And they might need
That's
to
not good.
glycinate. Exactly. And they're running off the football field again. So I think, yeah, consumers do have awareness of some things that can be really helpful for, say, their children or themselves for supporting themselves as supplements. But that's where you have like really great trained professionals that can really direct you in like what you need. So like nutritionists will do that and naturopaths will do that. So I can use nutrition within my qualifications. And then I can also use herbal medicine, which is another type of medicine of supplements, which is amazing for all these different things. So often I could use one herb or several herbs for one person that could target improving their gut, improving their performance, and supporting their nervous system. So helping them to relax and recover. And yeah, the amount of things we can use for someone is great. So it's really narrowing it down for what they specifically need at that point in time.
It seems like it's very individualized, and that's what I love about it because I think that's what we discovered in the project in 2010 in the UK was the minute we started taking the sports and the coaching into more the individualized route, we started to see the best success. And what was really interesting, when they started implementing these intolerance tests in early 2010 and 11, they noticed that the athletes who started avoiding those foods, one of the other problems athletes had was sleep, but sleep actually started to work better. And I remember the sports scientist from Loughborough University that was working with Leicester City at the time. And his
Mm.
belief was that if your digestive system's not having to deal with the constant stuff it doesn't want, then it can focus on the big stuff, which is sleeping and recovering. Uh, but 2025, after getting to meet you, it's gone to a whole other level on where we can take it now. It's scary, isn't it? The success we can get.
I think each year there's different tests that come out, or the tests that were available are improved upon. So I think even in the last 10 years of what has been available for people to get done via functional testing has just dramatically improved and increased in what can happen. And I'll just touch on sleep too, because intolerance testing can be really helpful in understanding what is causing issues within the gut and, like, say, the inflammatory responses that go on when you have a food that your body's not handling well. And usually, my first question with intolerance testing, if something comes back, say that your body can't handle it, is why can't it handle it? And that's what part of my role is to look at that root cause. So often, when someone has come in to see me and we do some sort of intolerance testing, once you heal the gut, you often can bring those foods back in and have them again. But let's just jump back to when you can't eat the foods and your sleep is problematic. It's because your body's inflamed and it's causing a response that needs to be dealt with. And sleep is a time where you're recovering and you're eliminating certain waste products, and the organs in your body are basically repairing. So if you have too much inflammation, it's really focusing on trying to get rid of that rather than, optimizing the body in a way that's not just trying to like survive and fix things that are going wrong. So it makes complete sense to me that, yeah, your athletes had great sleep after they eliminated things that were causing inflammation.
Yeah, definitely. And we noticed the huge gains just in the fact he was sleeping better.
Yeah.
It was a game changer. Now, moving on a little bit, we're going to now talk about, and this was really interesting, about the connection between the gut and the brain. And can you talk to us a little bit about that, but also why it's important, but also if you don't get it right, how it can cause problems on and off the field?
Absolutely. So this is something called the gut-brain axis, and it sounds very sciencey, and some people's eyes glaze over when I say it.
Man did.
So I like to phrase it more as like nervous system regulation or like supporting your brain. So basically, in a nutshell, how we describe the gut-brain axis is if you've ever gone on the pitch or the field and you felt butterflies in your stomach, that's a phenomenon known as the gut-brain axis. So whatever you're feeling in your brain has a connection down to your gut, and whatever's going on in your gut has a connection up to your brain. So there's bilateral connection and communication channel that goes on here. Part of that is a whole lot of nerves, and it's called the vagus nerve. So when we're talking about regulating your nervous system or looking after your brain health, we're trying to tonify those nerves in a way that's going to support the person. So tonifying it as in strengthening it. And what that means is the next time you go out onto the pitch or the football field, you're like, feeling more safe and secure within yourself to not feel so nervous. And you know how to deal with nerves at that point in time. So this is to do with stress regulation tools. But if we go back to gut health, if your gut is healthy and functioning properly, that is like the first step to supporting your brain. Because if you've got inflammation going on in the gut, for instance, or issues going on in the gut, that's going to cause issues within the brain, like brain fog, poor memory, the inability to be present and show up in the greatest capacity that you want to, whether that's performance or like with people that you love. And so, yeah, supporting your gut supports your brain, but then you have the flip side where you have stress management tools to support your way of showing up to the day, showing up to the match, the training, and then also recovering from that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. I'm not going to tell anyone his name because he'll kill me if I reveal it. But I've got we'll say a friend who was a professional football soccer player,
Yep.
and he was often he'd done it on about 4 occasions. He literally had to run off the pitch mid-game. So we're
Wow.
talking like live on television around millions of people around the world, and because his gut needed to take to the bathroom.
Yep.
And a couple of months later, after it was still carrying on from his youth time all the way to senior football. He actually had something that fell out the back of his car one day, and it was like a yoga mat. And I asked him what it was, and he's like, "Don't you dare tell anyone, because if anyone finds out." But basically, he discovered that through meditation and doing yoga and stretching, it actually got rid of his pre-game nerves, and it was his nerves that were causing him problems. So
Yeah.
if we talk about roles of stress management, do you want to build on that one, and you can confirm that was what was going on in his body, probably?
Yeah, I'd say a part of that was his vagus nerve was just not very well tonified. So it was weakened. And then what that meant was when he felt nervous, his bowels would just kind of let go and not be able to hold themselves. So that's probably part of the reason why he felt like that.
Uh,
And then when he did yoga, it's actually a mind-body kind of practice. So like the yoga I teach is a lot of stress management and also recovery type yoga. So it's connecting your mind to your body, which is essentially the gut-brain axis. And so you're breathing, you're moving your body, which is calming everything down. And a good way to explain this would be there's two parts of your brain. One's called the sympathetic nervous system and one's called the parasympathetic nervous system. Your players probably have heard of this because when they're in a game, they're in sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. And then
yeah,
post the game, they want to move into rest and digest, which is parasympathetic nervous system. And what happens a lot in, say, extreme athletes or professional athletes is they become dominant in their sympathetic nervous system or SNS, and then they find it hard to wind down or recover. So basically, practices like yoga helps to strengthen and tonify the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is again part of that vagal tone. And then it means that they show up to their matches much better and then they recover much better because their body's just functioning in more of that balanced way. Essentially, your body can only stay in fight and flight for so long before it just
yeah,
goes, hey, look, I just need a rest. I need to just have a break. And I'm sure a lot of your players are, say, like that type A perfectionist, like real hard going personalities. And so, yeah, I see you nodding. You're like, oh, I
yeah,
that too.
yeah, yeah,
So
100%.
so these kinds of people, you actually take care of their health in unique ways compared to the general population because they just think a little bit differently and they're always like pushing to that next level. So often they're really keen to like, go, go, go. And the hard thing for them, the challenge is to actually try and switch off. But it's when you switch off that the magic happens. It's when recovery happens. It's when you actually learn things about yourself that is inhibiting your performance. And that's why those mind body practices like yoga, breath work, types of meditation are just so important for athletes these days.
Yeah, it's so true, and I love that. I can see now. I've got a couple of parents. We work with about 300 parents on a weekly basis, but I know two or three of them really well, and they're going to love this episode because they've all been quizzing me on this. Now, if we move on to like the basics of health, and this is a great one, and I actually spoke to some of our parents at the weekend on a call. If they want to get the basics right for the son or daughter, let's say they're 13, 14 years of age, where do they start, and what
Mhm.
is the foundation? What are some of the key things they've got to start looking at, Melissa?
Yeah, so there's five basics of health that I look at. And I actually use this in clinic, but I've used it from like lived experience too. So your listeners understand, I actually have a history in chronic fatigue syndrome that I've healed from. And growing up, I did a bit of sport and I was very much a type A personality. And that was part of what ended up moving me towards being in such a state of chronic problems with CFS. And so when I was healing from it, the first things I did was get the basics of health sorted. So that was, making sure I was drinking enough water that was quality water. So filtered water was one thing. Making sure my diet was great, having whole foods, enough protein, make sure I was meal prepping so I wasn't like left stranded with takeaway options. Sleep was the third one, which we've touched on. So getting to bed on time, regulating my circadian rhythm. So that's enough sunlight throughout the day and less screen time at night. Next was exercise, so moving my body in a specific way. And then the last one's sunlight. So making sure you're actually getting time outside in the fresh air with sunlight and getting vitamin D and other nutrients from that outdoor perspective. And so once I got those things sorted from a lived experience, it meant I could then improve my health in lots of other ways and heal myself from CFS. So if we bring it back to your players, if they start to get those basics of health sorted, it means that you've just got the foundations done and you don't have to think about it. You can just tick
Yeah.
that box and you go, yep, I've got that done. So if all those things are lined up, all those ducks are lined up, what are the next things I can do to increase my performance and everything else to that next level, that next layer, that next 1%? And then from there, like you can see a lot of things happening within someone's health or whatever their goal is for their health journey.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And one of the big ones, it's interesting, we're going to do it. It's one of our next podcasts is around water and hydration.
Mhm.
And I've got a nice glass of water here. I'm about to have some, but
Yes.
I got what's called the Kangen water filter, and they
Mhm.
cost about $6,000. But basically, we can turn the pH level to what we want it to come out to.
Yep.
And that's like I've noticed the past couple of weeks, the difference since being having the pH water has been unbelievable.
That's phenomenal. And I've actually written a water filter guide. So if your clientele is within the Australian region, it's specific for Australian water filters and Australian like regulations surrounding that. So it's a free guide on my website that goes down from, water bottles to like whole house filtrations. And then you can learn about why it's important, what kind of brands there are and like how you can start by filtering your water to better your health and your performance.
Yeah, we done some of the testing with our water in our house, and the results were terrifying when I
Yeah.
seen the quality of the water that comes out the tap.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, even down to washing fruits and vegetables in their tap water
Yeah.
versus the pH water, and then showing what comes off the fruit and vegetables, and it was scary.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And not to get all grim and dark, but there are certain things that are passed through the water that can kind of go into our guts. So there's something called like blastocystis, which is this it's technically a parasite, but more research is coming out of it being a parasite or not. They're trying to work that out. And for some people, if they get a bad strain of that, that can cause gut issues. And then that can obviously impact on how well they're absorbing nutrients because it can take some nutrients to live. And then that impacts on how people can perform too. So by filtrating your water, you can actually remove, yeah, those things out of it and then know that your health's being supported and not having to worry about little things that are crawling around.
Yeah, I looked at it, and like the cost of these are about $5,000, $6,000, and I know to some people that's going to be like way out of people's reaches, but I think long term, I think like these have got like 25 years guarantee and warranties, and you only have to change the filter every 6 months. And it's like in the
Awesome.
bigger picture, there's so much research out there now, and there's a lot of links to certain diseases and that, and you think it'd be crazy not to go with it.
Yeah.
It's a benefit. Now, just to finish off on that little subsection on the basics of health, and you did touch on it a little bit, but can we touch on personality testing really quickly and why to you it's probably paramount that you get it and you have it done?
Yeah, I think personality testing is one of the best things you can do as a person. And I think if we start with the parents, often it's great to start with like what personalities the parents have, because from there, once the parents understand themselves, that then helps them to understand their children. So for, say, teenagers versus adults, there's different indexes that you can use. And so there's one specific index you could use for teenagers because we've got to remember that their personalities are still developing. And with anything like this, you don't want to like put someone in a specific box and then kind of limit them to how they could grow. But there's a specific index that can be done for, say, teenagers that can help them to understand how they interact with their external environment. And so, from an athletic performance, if they can understand how they react in that way, then they can then come back to how they can recover from that within themselves. And so, by understanding how someone is, uniquely made up, then that can help them to understand how to recover better with stress management tools. Like, for instance, someone might be really good with yoga, but they might be better with something like breath work, or they might have a specific type of, you know, stress management tool that supports them that it doesn't for someone else. So by understanding who you are as an individual, you can then understand how you can take care of yourself better. And then in turn, that helps you in so many other ways. Because essentially, once someone realizes how they can take care of themselves, that just impacts on every other part of their life, how they show up for themselves, how they show up for their whatever they're doing in their life, and then the people that they're around. So I use it all the time in clinic. It helps me to understand how to help people best, but ultimately it's so that they can have a tool within their own toolkit that brings them back to being self-responsible for their health journey and not having to rely on, say, someone telling them what to do and how, if I'm feeling like this, what do I do? It's like, okay, I've got these tools now, or if I'm feeling like this, I can step into my own empowerment and then move through that, whatever it is, in a way that feels really supportive. And that builds a lot of like strength and power within that person to move forward into whatever they're doing in their day.
Yeah, we used personality testing in the past, more so on the players, and then we did start to delve into parents, which we're going to move on to. This is a really interesting one, but
Mhm.
when we're talking about parents, and I think the big part of the role of a parent, and this was something that I think we knew in 2010 and 2011, but we were too scared to delve into because we were too scared of the fallout from the parents saying, "Why the hell are you doing this with us?" or "Why do you want us to do this?" But why is it important for parents
Mm.
to firstly take care of themselves? And why is that, as you know, if we're talking about a young athlete who's 14, 15, why is it so important that we talk about the parents as well?
Yeah, I think firstly, your family unit is like a team, right? So the child picks up a lot of things and the teenager picks up a lot of things that are going on in the house. And I think kids love it when their parents take care of themselves and really take ownership of their health journey because it inspires them to then be able to want to do the same thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is parents are so busy these days, and it's a really nice way of understanding how they can take care of themselves and not feel guilty for it. I think there's a lot of, guilt associated with if I do this for me, then, I'm not doing whatever I need to do within the family. But by taking care of yourself as the parent, that then has that flow-on effect to the marriage, or if you're a single parent for yourself, then that has a flow-on effect for the rest of the family. And I think from like my own personal experience, my dad was sick with cancer when I was a teenager and sadly passed away. So I missed having a father for most of my teenage years and into my adult years and even now. And so I have this very incredibly strong mum, and she had ways that she took care of herself, which had a flow-on effect to us. So I saw that, difference between not having someone in my life and then also having a really strong parent in my life. So yeah, imagine if both parents could come together, if you have that kind of household, knowing themselves, knowing how to take care of themselves, and just that huge flow-on effect to the kids. And the way I see this is it's kind of like that health legacy that you're building within your home. Once you know yourself and how to take care of yourself, that becomes this like precious family heirloom that you pass on to the next generation. And then your kids can have that heirloom, which is your health legacy, which they then pass on to the next generation. And it's this positive flow-on effect. And I think we see legacies as like financial or whether it's furniture or jewelry or whatever it is, but we kind of forget that like we are a walking health legacy and our
Yeah,
genes and our genome are actually going to be passed down, whether we like it or not, to the next generation. It's one thing that we can have control of in everyday life that is compounds over time. The simplicity of that compounding effect of health for ourselves and the next generation is just a huge reality in our world.
yeah. I think with the internet now and all the knowledge out there, we've got access to so much stuff. And I think it's scary where we can take families and where we can take athletes in the next 5, 10, 20 years because it's getting so good with AI and technology. And now, moving on a little bit on a slightly different twist on this, but talking about hormonal changes. So, males, females, I've been very privileged to be part of both males and females. Not only as a coach, I've worked with women's and men's, but also having two daughters as well.
Yeah.
Why is that so important that you're across that? And what's some of the top tips that you could give on that for parents and that out there?
So great question. I think the first thing is that there is a difference in males and females' growth during teenage years, as well as how they can perform in those teenage years. So the first thing is, girls often develop in their brain a bit faster than boys, so it takes longer for the boys' brains to develop. Secondly, hormones are so different. So, boys are a little bit more black and white in how their hormones are developing, whereas girls, like, they're getting their menstrual cycle like from age 10 these days, anywhere up to age like 15 or older. So that's going to really influence how they can show up to their training and how they can show up to recovery. And so, one thing that was quite lacking when I was going through high school was education around the menstrual cycle and how it affects energy and how it affects performance. And there's much more information out these days, as well as like research that's showing different weeks of that girl's menstrual cycle can really impact on performance and how you can actually influence training to support that different time of the woman's or girl's like month. So I think allowing the parents to make it not a taboo topic in the house is very important. Like, this is what it's like to be a girl, this is what it's going to be like being a woman. And then working in with them, understanding on how they can learn about themselves. And, maybe one week they're not feeling too great in their performance. And it's probably just because their hormones are a little bit different that week compared to another week. And it's just really refreshing for a girl to learn that she doesn't have to be like a male. And in turn, that actually makes her a much better athlete for it. So that's probably how I would approach it in, yeah, men versus women.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's down to communication, and I think it's yeah, removing it from being taboo and actually just having open communication about it. And
Yeah.
I think it's definitely needed. And I think we're definitely I can definitely say even as far back as 10 years ago, like the English Football Association, were very sort of future planning ahead with this and about how they approach it in the male and the female sides of the game. And it's one of the things I think they've done really well, even to the point of uh, knowing when certain games or there's big competitions, tournaments, worlds coming up, they could literally maneuver everything to suit the athlete. Like, and some of the tricks of the trade was unbelievable.
Wow.
On where they could help the female athletes as well. So that was really, really good to see. Now we
Yeah.
are running out of time, but before we do finish off in the next couple of minutes, I wanted to ask you when I first met you, it's evident that everyone I seem to meet lately, especially people who run their own business, they absolutely love what they do. And I could
Yeah.
see that in you when the first time I met you. And where did it come from? Why did you first start? And what's the big plans for the future? Is it going to be just the business that you've got, or is the plans to expand? And yeah, really keen to share it with the families who are watching.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I got into what I do because I always wanted to help people to be better versions of themselves. So that's initially why I started in psychology. And then once I got through the degree, I realized that I wanted to delve more into the ins and outs of health, and naturopathy really offered that for me. So it meant I could look at, science in a different way and use a lot of other tools and resources within my clinical practice. And essentially, I think losing my dad was like the instigator of kind of what I do, why I do what I do. He was an incredible man. He built his own businesses from scratch. Like, for instance, he moved out to a country town from Brisbane when he was 21 and built a service station because there wasn't one. And I'm thinking of myself,
Wow.
21-year-old, and I'm like, I wouldn't know where to start. So he had this real, like, yeah, foresight of knowing what that town needed, and then actually going forward and making steps towards making it happen. And then that's influenced that community to this day. So that's probably
Yeah.
from a young age I saw my mum and my dad work in business and how that could influence a community in a really positive way. And then seeing him get unwell was just, something that was definitely heartbreaking. It was a trauma, it was a grief journey that I've walked through. And it's really inspired me to, yeah, understand how we can help people to have their health legacy. And my dad's part of my health legacy. And so, how can I help people to understand what that looks like for them in their own unique way to be able to live their life to like a great capacity, to meet the day with joy, to feel well within themselves, to have vitality, to live out their life with purpose, and not feel like chronic health issues or problems going on with their health hold them back from what they like really want to do and how they show up for the people they love. because ultimately we've only got this one life here on earth, and you want to be able to show up and love those people in your life as best as you can. And having health is like a foundation to be able to do that. So that's why I do what I do.
That's amazing. It's a really good one to finish on. It's quite funny how grandparents seem to be the ones who have the biggest effect in your lives. And I was really close with both sets of my grandparents, but I was very fortunate to live with my mum's mum and dad for many years. And
Oh,
yeah, my granddad was someone I really looked up to, but unfortunately, he was involved in World War II and they were given cigarettes for stress management. And he
oh,
actually died of lung cancer.
mm,
And that was one of the big things I remember saying, like, if there's one thing I could change would be for him not to smoke. And then we discovered on his deathbed that the first time he picked up cigarettes was when they were given to them in the war.
yeah.
So I was like, right, I'm never smoking. I want to be here as long as I can. I want to try and have a legacy as half as good as my granddad. And yeah, I think that's where we all aspire to. Now, Melissa, before we do go, if anyone wants to reach out, and hopefully I've said this right, but am I right in saying that on your website, if anyone wants to connect with you, they can get like a 10 or a 15-minute free consult? Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you go onto my website, you'll see there's a button that says a free 15-minute strategy call. And this is basically something you can book in and we can just chat about where you're at with your health journey and just to see if we're a good fit for each other, for me to be able to help you to get to where you want to go. So that's, yeah, free for people. And then if they do want to look into what I do first, I have other free resources like free guides to download, free recipes. I'm really passionate about having great food in the home. So I've got free recipes on the website that are all tried and tested, all gut friendly. You know, they a lot of them are gluten free, dairy free, and refined sugar free, but they have really good taste. So they taste good, and that's the main thing.
That's the most important thing. Yeah.
I also, yeah, have a recipe book. So that's just like it'd actually be really good for households that have people who want to do meal prep for their kids because it's all gut friendly recipes and there's a whole section on the different macronutrients that we touched on. So it explains the different macronutrients and what they do for you, as well as the types of foods that are really good for those groups of macronutrients. And then, yeah, how to actually meal prep. And once you know how to meal prep, that helps you on like grocery list shopping and then, yeah, basically using those recipes to support the household in ways that's really nourishing for your gut and in turn everything else we've spoken about. So they're the best ways to get in contact.
Now, just I know some of my parents, I've got them, I can hear them in my ear, and we've got athletes and families all around the world in the US, Canada, Australia, the UK.
Yeah,
So as long as they line up the time correct, anyone in our program could reach out and set up a 15-minute consult if this is something they're interested in.
that's right. Yeah. So the times will be in Australian Eastern Standard Time for Brisbane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's easy for them. And then for the books, they're all ebooks, so they get delivered straight to your inbox. So it doesn't matter what time you purchase them, they just get delivered straight away, wherever you are.
That's amazing. So what I'll do is, if it's okay with you, Melissa, I'll get all of the links and everything. We'll put it in our show notes. So if you're watching this now as a recording, if you look in the show notes below, you'll see all the information for Melissa. So Melissa, a big thank you from me, Raymond Wood, and at the Professional Player Pathway. And yeah, I hope you have a great week. And yeah, I'd love to touch base again, maybe another 6 to 12 months to see how everything's going.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Ray. It's been a real treat and honor being here today.
Thank you.